Hello, magnificently bold. How are you, my darling? It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us. So we're just waiting for a few more people to join in. Hi, Lisen. My lady of the moment has arrived. I'm just trying to get the lighting right. I think that looks pretty good. I love Isola, Louis Depp. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. And
Oops.
there she is.
Let's see. There I am. Hi.
We did it!
I know. Good morning from Bali.
Good evening from Jamaica, but guess what I'm wearing? Good morning, Bali. And
Oh, sweet.
isn't that sweet? Yeah. It's so good to see you and to have you here. How are things in Bali?
Oh, things are great. The sun is shining this morning. It's beautiful. And, things have been just this way. It's always been during this whole pandemic. It's been quiet. It's a close-knit community still. And, it's, life is still moving.
Indeed, indeed. And
we're blessed. I feel like this is a blessed place to be, for sure. Because, the whole island is, during the whole pandemic, it's almost been like a bubble, So constantly, it's like when talking to other people from other places, it's like you get this reminder. It's like, wow, this thing is happening around the world, and we're just really blessed and grateful to be here.
Oh my goodness. So as I listen to you, one of my favorite people in the whole world has just come on. I'm just going to call her Rock Tower. She knows who she is, but one of my dearest friends. But it's interesting to hear you say that, Lisen, because I remember when I was in Bali with you and this feeling that we were in this bubble, and even the whole ordeal of travel took on epic proportions for people like us, global nomads, who have spent most of our time traveling. And I have to say, having stepped out of that bubble, this is a different reality. I can't even tell you, of course, I miss aspects of Bali. I miss you, I miss our community, the simplicity of life, as it were. Jamaica is way more complex than that. But it's just, it's another bubble, so wherever you are in the world, you're sort of landing in your bubble and navigating through that. So I'm glad you're here, coming in from my second home, as it were. And thank you for accepting the invitation, for being on Woman Talk. And this was really an offering for me, sisters I've met on my journey, people I've worked with, and we hear so much about, International Women's Day and Women's Month and what does it mean to be a woman at this time, and women are rising, la da da da. And it's fascinating to be in a backdrop like Jamaica that has such strong women, yet at the same time this is a hyper masculine society. So trying to navigate both of those and being back in that vortex, as opposed to the Balinese vortex, which is largely feminine. And I have to confess, by the time I left Lisen, I needed some alpha masculinity in my life. And so, stepping back into this and going, oh, wow, this feels really good. So it's all about balance. Yeah, I just wanted to share that for our listeners.
Well, thank you. And I also just want to say, it's there was never a question of not accepting this invitation that you sent, because obviously I'm just honored to be, one of the women that you selected to be on this talk and this series that you're doing. Because I think it's so important to to highlight these stories that we're sharing. And I know that we're probably going to get into, our stories as well, and how we met and why we're even doing this together today. But I think it's funny because, obviously, like, you're in Jamaica, but I keep following you. And when you say it's like you needed this like hyper masculine, I can even see it in your daily activities. You're constantly posting these videos. So you like CrossFitting and like, definitely it's like lifting weights and lifting like truck tires. And, there's like, and I've been feeling the same actually recently, which is interesting because I left my daily practice of yoga to go more into weightlifting because I needed somehow to offset the balance that I have been feeling. So, 2020 was like a year of going way more inwards. And I feel like 2021 now is like, this is the time to just like get the voice out there and the energy out there, which is why I think that it's just also really amazing that we're doing this talk together today.
Wow. Thank you. And I hope our listeners made a note of that. For me, 2020 was really an incubation period, as it were. And as some of you may have read in the post, I met Lisen through yoga. We both practiced Bikram. And again, there was something in those early days of the pandemic where routine was key. So it was my meditation, my prayer, yoga, and then whatever else the day had to offer. And I'll be honest, some of those days found me with the curtains drawn in bed watching Netflix, But I remember specifically that retreat that I did with Natasha, and I think we did that in about October. And by the time October rolled around, I certainly felt like I needed some energy. And I could pick up energetically as a teacher, as an empath, as a coach, that what people really wanted wasn't yoga, but something that was just like, screw this pandemic. Let's have some fun. Let's work hard. Let's play hard and let that shit go. And that we certainly did. And I recalled you had just come out of your surgical procedure and you were a little bit hesitant as to how you wanted to navigate this retreat. And I remember the day something went boom, and I saw it in your eyes. And the next thing you were with that hammer, I am great. I am amazing. I am a powerhouse. And from there, it was just like, whoa. So I just want to share a little bit with our audience about what really struck me with you, and the courage and the grace was that day we met at Mother's for breakfast, and you told me the project that you were working on. Welcome everyone that's dropping in. We're so glad you're here. And you spoke, there was a reverence with which you spoke about the project that you were doing, because you had some understandable hesitation, being a Norwegian woman, a Viking woman, a white woman. How dare you decide to research and talk about women of color that have had an impact on the world? And I looked at you and I go, well, why wouldn't you do it? Why not? In fact, I think it was so powerful that you dared to take on this work, because for someone that has done a fair bit of, diversity, I hate that word, inclusivity, connectedness, and oneness, it's not me the world needs to hear from. It's you the world needs to hear from, particularly your word. All of us need to be talking, but when you dare to get uncomfortable and take on a topic like this, you're impacting change on the world. So I'd love for you to share with us what made you decide to take on this project. What did you learn about yourself while doing this project, and anything else you want to share with us?
Well, there's multiple layers to it, right? But so the project is called Power of the Women. So it's all inclusive, and it's not necessarily only about women in particular. It's also the divine feminine. So we're talking about these like masculine, feminine energies, right? And I know both of, like we've spoken about this before as well, but when you talk about like the corporate world, how masculine it has been for decades, and women in general in society has been like, you know, trying to fit into that mold. More and more people, even men that I've been meeting here, they say that they are actually now like looking into how can they tap more into their feminine energies, because they feel like they need to balance that. And it's funny how like both you and I are like right now tapping more into our masculine energy of like, you know, muscle strength and that physical aspect of it. But for the project in itself, I've gone through my own personal journey of multiple layers, and 2020 was definitely one of those moments for as many of us, an eye-opener and a time to reflect. And when I look back at everything that I have done in my past, it just somehow it seemed that 2020 was a year that things started to actually align. It was like this, you know, tapestry of life has been slowly weaving itself together, and all of a sudden it created this beautiful pattern that was just like laid in front of me.
Wow,
And
that's fantastic. Anyone, any of our listeners can relate to that? You know, it's funny you would share that, Listen, because I remember returning from South Africa on the 11th of March and Bali shutting down on the 12th of March. And when I heard about this virus, I kind of smiled and I said, I was made for this. I got this, you know. And it was really the time where we got to sit down, shut up, be still, and go, what the hell am I doing? You know, and so that awakening, you know, whether we want to talk about it in the spiritual realm, or, you know, which can sound a bit woo for some people, but it was an opportunity. In every crisis, there is an opportunity. And 2020 was awash with an opportunity, starting with taking care of the temple that is your body.
yeah. And, you know, if I go back to Power of the Women, because one of the things that I really wanted to do as well, that I wanted to somehow create a platform where I could help elevate others and help elevate the stories of others. Because, you know, when we share whatever story it is that we have gone through, it's like we can take that darkness and turn it into light. And I felt like out of all the different experiences, what can I do as an individual to make that small change and small impact? So coming from an arts background, but also the combination and the balance of corporate and organizational structures, I you know, started to weave these things in together into a research project. So I started to research women from all over the world. And I remember I asked you to sit down for a coffee with me because I really wanted to ask you that one question, because I was hesitant of like, am I the right person for this job as a white, you know, white privileged woman from Norway? But I also felt like you said, it's actually my calling. Like, I just felt like it was something within me that is like, this is something I really deeply feel like I have to do. And to say your voice matters. And I always, you know, we're coming from yoga and we always talk about that inner voice. But if you also think about social responsibility is divided into 4 categories. And most people don't even are aware of that. But we always think about corporate social responsibility and the global social responsibility. But it actually starts with individual social responsibility. And individual social responsibility is about the emotional aspect of the individual. Because when you are in alignment with yourself, true to yourself, and speak your voice, listening to that inner voice, and allowing that to shine out, that's when we can move over to personal social responsibility, which is still within yourself, but then you move out of your outer body and the circle around you. So think about like your family, your friends, the close-knit community that you have around you. When you start making changes from those two layers, that's when we can move over to corporate social responsibility and the business aspect of it. Because everybody knows it doesn't really help, say, in an organization or business, if the senior management are putting into place all these fancy documents and policies and processes, unless the people, the staff, are actually each individual understanding and following and are in alignment with whatever the senior management wants to accomplish. Wow. It's the success of any business, right? And it works exactly in the same way for individuals. So if I was...
pause you for a moment? Can I just pause you? Because there's a lot that's coming here. So one of the things...
I get so excited.
I know. And for our listeners, Culture Doctor, big up yourself. So great to see you. Kanisha, great to have you here. Thank you all about the culture for always supporting. It really does mean a lot. Now, you know, one of the words that, well, when we talk about word sound power, and you and I have had several discussions about this, and one of our mutual friends, I remember us having a very animated discussion about this word privilege, because frankly, I do not like the term white privilege, because privilege is not synonymous with whiteness. And by virtue of that, what happens is that it creates yet another divide. For me, the word privilege means that I've been blessed with certain opportunities that others may not have, which means I have a responsibility to do something with that privilege. If I'm sitting down with my privilege and filing my nails, then what I'm doing is actually exercising arrogance. And so, you know, even that book, I don't know if you and I had this discussion, and I can only say this, and this is one of the things I admire and respect about you, that we can have this discussion. Even when I hear a term like white fragility, and I go, what the hell is that? You know, if we look at the meaning of the word fragility, fragile, handle with care, wrap in cotton wool, protect it, make sure it doesn't break. It doesn't work. The syntax does not work, you know. So what I'm actually hearing is a woman of Norwegian extraction who has a certain amount of privilege, who chose to do something about it. You didn't have to. You could hang out. You didn't have to. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to say that. I made some other little points. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, listen, in regard to what you just said, and I think this was one of the things that certainly took me out of the so-called corporate realm, is recognizing when my company or organization's mission is not in alignment with mine. I've always said I can neither work for nor sleep with someone I don't have any respect for. And so, you know, we're in this time now, Black Lives Matters, where, you know, everyone was talking about diversity and inclusion. It's like, really? Is this where we had to come to really see? But maybe it's where we had to. And so now, in the crisis of Black Lives Matters, there's an opportunity for us to push the envelope, for us to dare to say things that we couldn't or wouldn't say before, because heaven forbid, you know? So I just wanted to make those 2 points. Thank you.
Well, it's also like, you know, in terms of, let's say it's like in terms of like my project and why I wanted to do it is in this kind of way that I'm doing it as well. And for, you know, the listeners, the project combines art and personal storytelling, but it is a research project. So, and it goes beyond just women of color. It's all ethnicities and all religions, professions. It's women around the globe who have done amazing things in the past, but also women who are leading the way today, without necessarily, huge following or huge platforms. But I just wanted to showcase them and create, almost like a resource center and a knowledge center online. So young women and even like women like ourselves can go onto this website and easily scroll down and find the resources and information about these women. Because I've spent months researching this woman, and being an organizer, I have all these like spreadsheets now of like lists of women. And, I kind of had to categorize them almost because it became so big. And I see it as something that will obviously never end, because there's always going to be amazing women out there that deserves to be celebrated. So it's all about our global past, but also our collective future.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
It is, so it's all about educating, inspiring, and empowering about those two aspects, because it's not about hanging on to the past. It's about understanding where we come from, celebrating that, honoring that, and then move forward in the direction that we want to go. So coming from, the background that I do, which was working heavily within corporate social responsibility strategies, and also being a previous art student, but with a major in critical and cultural practices and the use of image and text, and how we can convey a message in artistic and creative ways to make social impact and social change. So I started to, after a break of probably 12 years, I last year started to paint and started to draw and realized like the reason why I've always painted women. And I had to actually think about this, why have I always been drawn to illustrating women? And it comes from my personal background as well, because when we talk about privilege or not, we all have some darkness that we've experienced. And I'm no different. And even though coming from a beautiful family, loving family and all that, but there's still challenges that I experienced as a young woman too. Depression was one of them, and the lack of confidence and all these, things that most people go through. But I used to look at other women and I would illustrate them and emphasize the beauty and the strength that I oftentimes felt that I was lacking myself. So I found that strength through other women, and particularly with the emphasis of the eyes, because eyes can tell us so many things about a person. You can still have some kind of, shy, kind of a little bit reserved kind of attitude, but there's so much strength and power in the eyes of a person.
The windows
and so much
to the
love.
soul.
It is the windows to the souls.
And in fact, it's one of the things, even here in Jamaica, I've not lived in Jamaica full time for many, many years, decades even. But even with the fact that we're living in a time where we're all covered, there are still people that I have not seen in years, and I'm able to recognize them from their eyes. And I often say in Bali, where I can teach a class that have up to 60, 70 people in one fell swoop. And I run into people all over the world and they'll say to me, you probably don't remember me. I came to one of your classes. And I often say to them, I mightn't remember your name. Chances are I won't, but I will always remember your eyes if I connected to them. Eyes, they're the windows to the soul. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, listen, for, well, several questions. I've heard this often from women. How can I help? Where do I begin? It seems so overwhelming. I have an idea of where they should start. What words of wisdom can you offer in that regard? You want to make a difference to humanity. You want to do something that's not I-centeredness, though there's nothing wrong with I-centeredness. Where would you suggest that one starts?
Well, obviously you need to start with yourself, but also look at like, what are your passions? Like, what is it that you can contribute with? If I was to use myself an example, I have a passion of teaching. I have a passion of spreading knowledge. I have a passion within arts and creative fields and the written and spoken words. So how could I utilize those things and combine it with work, but also to do something for social good? So to me, it became like a natural thing to create a mentorship program for girls. So I'm, somebody's looking into bad Wi-Fi.
Our Russian sister. She said the
Oh,
Wi-Fi is not allowing her to see us. Welcome, Victoria. My God, talk about
yeah,
another
that's,
extraordinary woman. Poof!
oh yeah, so much love to her.
So much love to you,
That's
Victoria.
typical Bali.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, because if you don't do it and you just like, oh, I'm just gonna do something for the social good, but it's not aligned with your own values or your passions, then it's going to be half-hearted, and it becomes like a stint. You want to create something that has a lasting impact, something that you can commit to for a longer term, because it's not a stint, it's a lifetime thing.
Absolutely. And I would say even beyond that, one of my favorite mantras from one of my country people, one of the visionaries of the world, Bob Marley, if my life is for me alone, then I don't want it. If my life is just all about me, then what is the point? And so one of the things with whatever it is you choose to do, and this is why, as you said, listen, identifying what that passion is so important, is that once we're clear and we're moving from passion, the rest kind of takes care of itself. But also, can you give it away? What is the legacy? What is the footprint that you want to leave on the planet, really? Mm-hmm.
I think, one of the first women that kind of was the...
Artemis is here, by the way. Hi, Artemis. You remember Artemis?
Hey,
hopping around on his 1 foot in yoga studio. Great to see you, my brother.
Our Bikram buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining. So, yeah, I think one of the first women that I came across in my research was Miss Stacey Bates, who was an African-American civil rights activist, but she was also a journalist and a publisher. And she was the only woman who was allowed on stage alongside Dr. Martin Luther King at the March of Washington in 1963. The only woman who was allowed on that stage to speak. Now, because she was a woman, she was not allowed to write her own speech. So a male staffer wrote her speech actually for her, even though she was an accomplished, an established publisher and journalist herself.
Wow,
So,
I didn't know that.
And I think, imagine if she could have used her own words, how powerful it would have been, even though obviously her heart came out in that speech no matter what. So it was powerless regardless. But she said, not in that speech, but a quote from her that I love and has become sort of almost like my mantra for many things, is that she said, "The world we live in is but the world that lives in us."
Poof.
So think about that for a moment. I'm going to repeat it. The world we live in, I'm getting chills, is the world that lives in us. So if you want to make any kind of changes, you have to start from within. So it goes back into like when I spoke about social responsibility as well, and this is what we talk about, right? If somebody listening and think that how can I help and what can I do? Well, you have to start from within. Even, can't remember the exact quote, but even Forbes India had a great article about this topic mentioning that individual social responsibility is an emotional change and an emotional shift that happens within. And when you do that, magic can happen and the change can happen. And I always say in my work too that creativity and sensitivity are our superpowers.
Write that down.
And we can use them. We can use them.
And sensitivity are your superpowers. Wow.
Yes. So when you talk about feminine divine, sorry, but I'm like the divine feminine, right? It's all about sensitivity, and don't mistake it for fragility, because that's something completely different. Sensitivity is having the awareness, right? We as yogis know that. So when you actually are allowing yourself to tap into that sensitivity, what am I feeling right now? How am I being affected by those around me? How can I affect and make an impact on those around me? That will cause a ripple effect. And when we also allow ourselves to be creative, stepping out of the box, then that's when we can also create the change that we want to see, because we're coming up with new solutions that are in alignment, like I said, about whatever your passion is and whatever your skill sets and expertise are as well. So it's like when I started Power of the Women, I would tick off like all of those boxes and wow, merging those things.
So what I'm hearing is creating a sensitivity and a creativity checklist, as it were, and really honing these as your superpowers. And, I would even expand sensitivity to include intuition. I think there's certainly some connection between the two. And one of the things, and it works on both sides in the time that we're living in. We're in this collective cesspool of anxiety, fear, anger, as you've just said with that beautiful statement before. And so what has really served me well is my sensitivity, noticing how I'm feeling in the environment, noticing what my intuition is telling me. And that has been my greatest blessing and teacher, particularly throughout, but particularly in the last year or so. So thank you for sharing that. I want to just ask you a couple of things before we go. I know you have an exciting project that you are about to launch at the end of this month. Would you care to share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Power of the Women, and it's Your Voice Matters mentorship program, but it's also on the 31st that we're launching the very first annual Your Voice Matters Global Summit, which is a virtual summit. And beautiful Universal Empress here is joining me as well. Thank you for that, as a keynote speaker. And we have other amazing women as well. And there's also some girls here from Bali who are going to share their personal stories coming from, underserved communities that have already gone through the program. The summit is all about, how can we forge the gender equality that we're talking about, but doing so coming from a creative way, coming from a place of unity instead of feeding anger into anger. I saw a thing on, I'm just going to mention it because it really struck me. One of the accounts that I follow, and I love them dearly, but there was an image saying that angry women will change the world. And I just thought to myself, no, anger feeds anger, and it doesn't serve anybody. It will hurt the person that's angry, and it will hurt the person that they're reflecting it back to. So any kind of healing that we want to do as a community on a global aspect as well needs to come from the place of unity. And, you know, not seeing it as one movement here and one movement there, and there's no symbiosis between them and unity between them. So this is what Your Voice Matters is all about, and Power of the Women is all about as well. So we're going to be launching the website. The Knowledge Center is coming up. Illustrations of amazing women from all over the world that are affordable digital artwork that you can easily just download and print in high quality prints, and have as inspiration in your home. And also then, you know, celebrating these women by putting them up on the mantelpiece in our houses, and educating young women and young girls about who these leading women are as well. So I'm very excited to actually get it scares me because this is also a very personal project. It's the first time I'm putting my artwork out there. But
which is gorgeous, you know, by the way.
Thank you. But it is one of the things as well, you know, like stepping out of our comfort zone and doing what is the right thing to do. That is scary sometimes. So it's going to be really amazing. I'm really excited about it. We also have some other keynote speakers on the 31st from West Africa and from Europe. So it's you know, going to be a global free live event. So if they follow Power of the Women _world on Instagram, then I will be very soon posting out more information there, and also when the website and the signups are available. So,
beautiful.
Or they can follow me as well. I'm going to be posting things on this account as well. So
beautiful. I have one final question that may seem like an unusual question. And that question is, one piece of insight that you wish you'd known at 18 years old that you now know.
Ooh. There's so much. Oh my goodness. Oh, I don't even know what to say to that, because when I look back, when I was 18, you know, and I've had this conversation with my dad as well now, actually, in the last year or so. That's when things have kind of come up to the surface in terms of conversations. But I remember being, you know, a very closed in many ways. Didn't seem like that to other people, but I was a very closed-in teenager. I wasn't talking about what I was feeling because I felt shame for even feeling whatever it was I was feeling.
Wow.
Which is just like this evil spiral, right? And so I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with bulimia. I would hide into the bathroom for hours after dinner. And I remember my dad like knocking on the doors and yelling for me to come out, but there wasn't like the dialogue that I needed. I can see where he was coming from because he didn't know how to deal with it either. He saw somebody, his daughter, struggling, right? And because he was scared, that came out as anger, which was just this, you know, we were like in a whirlwind and didn't really come to any kind of conclusion. So when I moved away and I moved to Canada to study art, the problems just escalated into injuring myself. And it wasn't until a New Year's Eve where I passed out. I didn't try to kill myself, but I passed out and the cuts got too deep. And I ended up in a hospital. And that was a huge turning point for me. And I realized, and this goes back into my Daisy Bates quote, the world we live in is but the world that lives in us. I was the one that needed to pull myself out of this. I was the one that could create the change. And that has been kind of like my source of many things. And even today, every single thing, if somebody would have told me back then, one, there's a power and healing in sharing your story and that your story matters. We talk about privilege. I felt shame because I felt like I shouldn't be feeling this because I come from a loving home. Why is this happening to me? I have no explanation for it. But the feeling was still there. It was still very real.
The feeling was still there. Yeah.
Yeah. And if somebody also would have told me that shifting your mindset as well to think that things don't happen to us. It happens with us.
Ashe. Yes, yes.
And the difference between those things is that when I shifted my mindset to thinking that this is not happening to me, I remove myself from victimizing myself, feeling sorry for myself, and I'm thinking as well, okay, why is this happening with me? Why am I now being used as a vessel for something? Because there is a lesson here. What is this trying to teach me? That's when I could use all of those, quote unquote, bad experiences to something positive. So when I talk about how are we turning the darkness into something light? How are we turning the darkness into a light that can help others and be that, shining light? So that's definitely something that I'm even teaching the girls that I talk to now. And the whole purpose of also the Your Voice Matters mentorship program is that it doesn't matter where you are from in the world, we all have a story to share and our stories matters. Whatever it is that you're feeling, and we can connect through those stories. And there's so much healing happening in those stories as well, and so much power. So again, tapping into daring to be sensitive instead of closing it in and be like, get yourself together. You can't say that to a person that's depressed,
Exactly.
if a person is sitting there crying. But that's what I used to get is I would be I remember sitting at home and crying, and it was coming up to me, it's why are you crying? Stop crying, get yourself together. Don't be so dramatic. It's I can't help myself.
Wow.
I'm feeling something so deeply right now, and it hurts. And that matters. Whatever that is, it matters. But yeah, there is so much power in shifting that energy from the darkness to the light.
Wow.
So this is the polar opposites as well. So in the logo of Power of the Women, because I have this huge interest in, cultural practices, goes back into my education as well, and how we're using text, how we're using shapes, how we're using colors to convey messages. So Power of the Women is equal white and black. You can't see the white square, but there's an equal proportion of white and black, polar opposites. In Balinese culture as well, that represents yin and yang, in other cultures as well. In the Balinese culture, that also represents the masculine, the feminine, the darkness, the light. Coming from yoga as well, we're all about the polar opposites, right? And creating the balance between them.
Wow. Thank
Now, the symbol within it is also part, you know, the West African Adinkra symbol, which represents strength, bravery, and power. So there's many cultural references here. And I think, again, it goes into the personal storytelling. So long answer to your question.
You know, it's fascinating
But
because when you talk about the interconnectedness, one of my dearest friends and teachers and mentors, and someone who has really been a beacon of light for me and a champion for my cause, came on this call exactly as we started to talk about, you know, the question when you were 18 years old and your father not knowing how to process your emotions. So for him, he then got angry. His frustration manifested as anger. And I was just saying to this dear friend of mine, we were just on a walk, one of Jamaica's top yoga and fitness and just amazing woman, Sharon Fiani, and we were talking about this as we were walking this evening, that we are blessed to live in a time where we're able to do this, where we're able to speak to our sisters and really share about what's happening, what's going on, without the shame, without the guilt, without thinking that we're going to be judged or laughed at, etc. Because one of my favorite sayings, and I think this is a beautiful way for us to wrap this, is to remember, be kind. Everyone, including yourself, is dealing with some battle. And that gives rise to compassion. And we can only be compassionate when we understand sensitivity, which you spoke of. Thank you so much, Lisen, for showing up and just for sharing
thank
who
you.
you are. I love you. I miss you. And
I love you
I'll
too.
see you soon, Jamaica, Bali, or somewhere in between. We're looking forward to
Yeah.
welcoming you here in Jamaica. Great stuff. You're already doing stuff for and with Jamaica. Our listeners don't quite know about that yet, so I won't make an
Yeah.
official announcement. But I want to acknowledge you for taking the time to research my country and to understand the nuances as you do the work that you're doing. As we say in Jamaica, respect and big up. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
we can easily give the shout out to say, if anybody wants to look it up, Upliftment Jamaica is a beautiful nonprofit that I've been working on some things with as well, and there will be some synergies there in the future as well. So the website is up and running, and they can check it out if they want to. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, my sister, give Bali my love. Thank you so much. And I look forward to
Thank
speaking
you.
with you again very soon. To all of our listeners, thank you for being there, for here, there, and here. I will obviously post this on my profile. You can follow, Lisen, Power of the Women. You will find her through me. And just thank you, everyone, for being here. Lots and lots of love.
Thank you so much.
Take care, honey. Okay. Bye.
Bye.